A 12-year-old boy stood trembling at that diner door, stomach empty for 3 days, and asked for one thing: leftover bread. The manager didn't just say no. He grabbed that child by his thin shoulders and threw him onto the concrete like garbage, while a room full of people watched and said nothing. But 15 minutes later, 10 Harleys rolled up, and what happened next made that manager wish he'd shown mercy when he had the chance. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end, because what these bikers did will restore your faith in humanity. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you what really happened that morning. Eli Patterson hadn't eaten in 3 days. Not 2. Not skipped a meal. 3 full days where his stomach had stopped growling and started cramping, where his hands shook when he tried to tie his shoes, where his vision went spotty if he stood up too fast. He pushed open the door to Doyle's diner and the bell chimed. Every head turned. A businessman looked up from his phone. An elderly couple stopped mid-bite. A nurse in blue scrubs paused with her fork in the air. 2 construction workers went quiet. They all saw the same thing. A skinny kid with dirt under his fingernails jacket, 2 sizes too small shoes, held together with duct tape. Eli's face burned hot. He wanted to run, but his stomach hurt too much. The manager appeared from behind the counter. Curtis Doyle, 40-something, tie too tight, eyes too hard. We don't serve walk-ins without money. Curtis's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Eli's throat went dry. I'm not asking for a meal, sir. Then what are you asking for? Leftover bread from yesterday. Stuff you're going to throw out anyway. His voice cracked. 12 years old, and his voice still betrayed him at the worst times. Curtis crossed his arms. Do I look like a charity? No, sir. You just thought what? That you could walk in here and take? Curtis took a step closer. Let me tell you something, kid. I work hard for what I have. Every piece of bread, every roll, every goddamn crumb, I paid for that. You understand? Eli nodded, but Curtis wasn't finished. People like you think the world owes you something. Well, it doesn't. You want to eat? Get a job. Work for it. The businessman glanced up, then back down at his phone. Fast. The elderly woman squeezed her husband's arm. The nurse stopped chewing. Nobody said anything. That silence pressed down on Eli heavier than hunger ever could. I'm sorry, Eli whispered. I'll go. He turned toward the door. Curtis grabbed his arm. Not gentle. Not a hand on the shoulder. Curtis grabbed Eli's upper arm hard enough that his fingers dug in hard enough that Eli gasped, and he physically shoved the boy toward the exit. Eli stumbled through the doorway. His shoulder hit the door frame. The bell chimed again, that same cheerful sound. Don't come back. Curtis straightened his shirt and walked back inside like nothing happened. Eli stood on the sidewalk, face burning, throat tight. Through the window, he watched Curtis pour coffee for the businessman. Watched the elderly couple go back to their pancakes. Watched life continue. He walked 20 feet and sank down against the brick wall, close enough to still smell food, far enough that Curtis couldn't see him. His stomach cramped. He pressed his hand against it, curling forward slightly. A woman walked past, talking on her phone. She nearly tripped over his feet. Watch it, she snapped, then kept walking. Eli pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them, made himself smaller. The world had taught him that was the best thing he could be. Inside the diner, Curtis refilled the elderly man's coffee. Terrible, isn't it? The old woman said quietly. These kids today, no work ethic. Her husband nodded. Parents probably on drugs. Curtis smiled. Exactly right, ma'am. You enable them, they never learn. The businessman paid his check, walked out, saw Eli sitting there, looked away, and kept walking. The nurse pushed her hash browns around her plate. They didn't taste as good anymore. She didn't know why. She finished eating anyway because she'd paid for it. At the counter, Curtis told himself he'd done the right thing. You couldn't run a business on handouts. Word would spread. Every homeless person in town would show up expecting free food. Basic economics. He almost believed it. Outside, Eli sat there for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of people walking past like he didn't exist. 15 minutes of his stomach eating itself. 15 minutes of wondering if this was all his life would ever be. Then he heard it. A rumble, low, deep, getting louder. Engines. Eli looked up. They came down the street like thunder. 10 motorcycles, all Harleys, all chrome and black leather. The sound bounced off the buildings, drowning out traffic, drowning out voices, drowning out everything. People stopped walking. A woman pulled her child closer. The construction workers came back outside to watch. Inside the diner, Curtis looked up from wiping down the counter. The bikes pulled up right in front of Doyle's diner, one after another. When those engines cut off, the silence felt violent. 10 men climbed off, not boys, men. Gray in their beards, scars on their hands, patches on their vests that said Hell's Angels, boots that had walked roads most people wouldn't drive. The leader dismounted last. Tall, silver hair pulled back, 60 years of living on his face and no apologies for any of it. His name was Rocco Kane. His eyes swept the street and stopped on Eli. Rocco walked over, boots solid on concrete. He crouched down in front of the boy. "You okay, son?" Eli's brain couldn't process the question. Was he okay? He didn't know how to answer that. "I'm hungry, sir." Rocco's jaw tightened. "When's the last time you ate?" 3 days ago. Behind Rocco, the other bikers had been walking toward the diner, but they stopped, turned. A huge man with a beard down to his chest. Hawk muttered something under his breath. Another biker, lean and scarred, shook his head slowly. "You got people?" Rocco asked. "Parents?" "No, sir." "Where are you sleeping?" "Park, wherever." Rocco studied him. Then he stood up. "Stay here, don't go anywhere." He turned and walked toward the diner. The other 9 fell in behind him like soldiers. The bell chimed when they pushed through the door. Curtis looked up. His professional smile formed automatically before his brain caught up. Hell's Angels. 10 of them. His smile flickered but held. "Gentlemen, welcome to Doyle's. We've got some great specials this morning. That booth." Rocco pointed to the corner booth by the window, the big one. "Absolutely. Let me just..." "It's fine." Rocco slid in first. The others followed. Leather creaked. The smell of road and exhaust filled that corner. The other customers went quiet. The elderly couple looked at each other with wide eyes. The nurse's hand shook as she lifted her coffee cup. Curtis approached with menus. His smile stayed fixed. "Can I get you gentlemen some coffee to start?" "That kid outside." Rocco's voice was flat. No preamble. "Why is he sitting on the sidewalk?" Curtis blinked. "I'm sorry." "The boy. Why is he out there instead of in here?" The diner went dead silent. Even the cook stopped moving in the kitchen. Curtis's face did something complicated. He let out a small laugh. "Oh, that one. Yeah, he came in earlier. Just a beggar, really. No money. Couldn't have him bothering my customers. Bad for business, you understand." Rocco stared at him. Didn't say a word. Just stared. Let the silence stretch. Hawk leaned forward. "The kid asked you for money." "Well, no, he..." "What'd he ask for?" Curtis shifted his weight. "Bread. Leftover bread. But that's not the point." "That is exactly the point." Rocco's voice went quieter. Quiet was worse than loud. "A hungry child asked for scraps, and you threw him out. Now look, I run a business here." "Bring him in." Curtis stared. "Excuse me." "The boy, bring him inside. Seat him at this table." Rocco leaned back, arms crossed. "Feed him. Put it on our tab." The entire diner was watching now. The nurse forgot she had food in front of her. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears. Curtis's face went red. Gentlemen, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I have policies." Hawk stood up. All 6'5" of him. Didn't say a word. Just stood there. Another biker stood, then another. They didn't threaten. Didn't raise their voices. They just stood. Curtis swallowed hard. The professional smile died on his face. What replaced it was naked fear. "I'll get him." His legs felt unsteady walking to the door. He pushed it open. That bell chimed. Outside, Eli was still against the wall. He looked up when Curtis appeared, and the fear on his face was sharp. "You," Curtis said. His voice came out wrong, too tight. "Come inside." Eli didn't move. Couldn't. Curtis walked closer. This time his hand wasn't rough when it touched Eli's shoulder. "The men inside. They want you to join them. For breakfast." Eli stared at him like he was speaking another language. "Come on," Curtis said, softer now. "Get up." Eli stood slowly. His legs had gone stiff from sitting. He followed Curtis to the door. Through it. The bell chimed. Every eye in the diner turned to watch him walk in. Rocco gestured to the empty space in the booth. "Sit down, son." Eli slid in. The vinyl was warm. His hands shook as he put them on the table. Rocco nodded to Curtis. "Bring him pancakes, eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice, milk, whatever a kid needs." Curtis opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. "Right away." He disappeared into the kitchen. The waitress, Sarah, 23, working her way through community college, came over with a water glass. Her hands shook slightly as she set it down in front of Eli. "You okay, honey?" she asked quietly. Eli nodded. Couldn't speak. Sarah squeezed his shoulder gently, then walked away. One of the bikers, younger than the rest, maybe 40 with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward. "What's your name, kid?" "Eli." "I'm Ghost. This here's Rocco. That big man's Hawk. You're safe now, understand?" Eli nodded again, not understanding anything but the kindness in their eyes. Curtis came back with a tray. Pancakes stacked high. 3 eggs over easy. Bacon 6 strips. Toast with butter melting into it. A glass of orange juice sweating condensation. A glass of milk so cold it hurt to look at. He set it down in front of Eli without a word. Eli stared at the food. More food than he'd seen in months. His stomach cramped so hard he doubled over slightly. "Easy," Rocco said. "Eat slow. Your stomach's empty. You eat too fast, you'll get sick." Eli picked up the fork. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. He cut into the pancakes. Syrup pooled in the cut. He lifted the fork to his mouth. The first bite hit his tongue and he nearly cried. Sweet, warm, real. He took another bite, then another. Then he forced himself to slow down because Rocco was right. His stomach was cramping, trying to figure out what to do with actual food. The bikers didn't talk. They just watched. Not in a weird way. In a protective way. Like guards standing watch. Around the diner, conversations had stopped. The elderly woman was crying openly now, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Her husband had his arm around her shoulders. The nurse pushed her plate away. She'd lost her appetite entirely, but not in a bad way. In a, I just watched something matter way. Curtis stood behind the counter, red-faced, staring at nothing. The businessman who'd left came back in. "Forgot my briefcase," he said to no one in particular. But he hadn't forgotten anything. He just needed to see how this ended. Eli ate half the pancakes, 3 bites of eggs, 2 pieces of bacon. He wanted to eat more, but his stomach was screaming at him to stop. He put the fork down. "Can't finish?" Rocco asked. Eli shook his head, ashamed. "I'm sorry, it's so good, don't apologize. Your stomach shrunk, it'll expand back." Rocco gestured to the waitress. "Box this up for him." Sarah hurried over with a to-go container. She packed up the remaining food carefully like it was precious, because it was. Rocco pulled out his wallet, removed 2 20s, set them on the table. "That covers his meal and yours, sweetheart," he said to Sarah. "It's too much," she protested. "Keep it." Sarah's eyes filled up. She nodded, took the money, and walked away quickly before she started crying in front of customers. Rocco turned to Eli. "You got somewhere safe to go." Eli hesitated, then shook his head. "How old are you?" 12. Hawk swore under his breath. Ghost shook his head. Another biker, older, with white hair and kind eyes they called Preach, leaned forward. "There's a shelter on Oak Street," Preach said. "Run by a woman named Martha. Tell her Preach sent you. She'll take care of you." "I tried shelters," Eli said quietly. "They always send me back to the system. And the system..." He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Rocco nodded slowly. "Okay, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna take this food. You're gonna go to that shelter. You tell Martha that if anyone from the system comes asking, she calls this number." He pulled out a pen, grabbed a napkin, and wrote down a phone number. Slid it across the table to Eli. "That's my number. Anyone gives you trouble, you call. Understand?" Eli looked at the napkin, at the number written in black ink, at this man he'd met 15 minutes ago who was treating him like he mattered. "Why are you helping me?" The question came out before Eli could stop it. Rocco was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried weight that seemed to fill the whole diner. "Because somebody helped me once, long time ago. I was about your age, hungry, scared, alone. A man I didn't know bought me a meal, told me I mattered, gave me hope when I had none." He paused. "That man saved my life, changed everything for me. And he told me, someday when you can, you do the same for someone else. So that's what this is, me paying forward what was given to me." He leaned forward, looked Eli straight in the eyes. "Listen to me. Don't let this world tell you you're worth nothing. Don't let people like him," he gestured toward Curtis without looking at him, "make you believe you don't matter. You hear me? You matter. Your life matters. You're not garbage. You're not invisible. You're a human being who deserves food and shelter and kindness. Don't you ever forget that." Eli's throat closed up. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he could stop them. He wiped them away fast, embarrassed. "None of that," Ghost said gently. "Ain't no shame in crying, kid." Rocco stood up. The other bikers followed. "You take care of yourself, Eli," Rocco said. "You go to that shelter. You call if you need us. And remember what I told you." Eli nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The bikers walked toward the door. Leather creaked. Boots thudded on the floor. The bell chimed as they filed out. But Rocco stopped at the counter. Curtis was still standing there frozen. Rocco walked up to him, stopped inches away, looked him dead in the eyes. "You ever," Rocco said quietly, "and I mean ever treat a child like that again, I'll hear about it. And I'll come back. And next time we won't be asking politely. You understand me?" Curtis nodded, his face white. "Good." Rocco walked out. The engines roared to life outside. 10 Harleys all at once shaking the windows. Then they were gone. The sound faded down the street, then disappeared entirely. The diner was silent. Eli sat there in the booth, the to-go container in his hands, the napkin with the phone number in his pocket. He looked around at all the faces staring at him. The elderly woman smiled at him through her tears. The nurse raised her coffee cup slightly. A small salute. The businessman walked over, pulled out his wallet, handed Eli $40. "For whatever you need," he said gruffly, then walked out fast like he was embarrassed. Sarah came over with a bag. "I packed you some extra toast and cookies. We made them this morning." She set the bag down, squeezed his shoulder again, and walked away. Curtis remained behind the counter. He didn't look at Eli, didn't look at anyone. Just stared at the register like it held answers it didn't have. Eli slid out of the booth, picked up his food, picked up the bag. He walked to the door. The bell chimed. He stepped outside into the sunlight. The street looked the same. Cars passing, people walking, everything normal. But something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in Eli's understanding of the world. Bad people existed. Curtis had taught him that years ago. But good people existed too. People who saw you when you were invisible. People who helped when they didn't have to. People who remembered what it felt like to be hungry and alone and scared, and who chose to do something about it. Eli looked down at the napkin in his hand, at the phone number written in black ink. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. Then he started walking toward Oak Street, toward the shelter, toward Martha, toward whatever came next. Behind him, inside the diner, Curtis finally moved. He walked into the back office, closed the door, sat down in his chair. And for the first time in 8 years, Curtis Doyle put his head in his hands and wondered what kind of man he'd become. Sarah cleared the table where Eli had sat, found $3 tucked under the syrup dispenser, the biker's tip for her separate from what they'd already given. She picked it up and her hands shook. The elderly woman turned to her husband. "We should have said something. When that manager threw him out, we should have said something." Her husband nodded slowly. "Yes, we should have." The nurse paid her check, left a $20 tip even though her meal was $12, walked out into the morning sun feeling like she'd witnessed something holy. One by one, the customers left. The diner emptied. And in the sudden quiet, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall and Curtis Doyle breathing in his office, wondering if he could ever make this right. Eli walked for 20 minutes before his legs started shaking. Not from fear this time, from exhaustion. From 3 days of nothing suddenly colliding with pancakes and eggs and the weight of $40 in his pocket that felt heavier than it should. Oak Street wasn't far. Preach had been right about that, but every step felt like a mile. He passed a convenience store and stopped, looked at the windows, saw his reflection and barely recognized himself. Dirt on his face, hair sticking up, eyes too big for his thin face. He looked like what he was, a street kid, a nobody. Except that wasn't true anymore, was it? Rocco's words kept playing in his head like a song he couldn't stop humming. You matter. Your life matters. Nobody had ever said that to him before. Not his mom before she left. Not the foster system. Not the counselors who looked through him like glass. Nobody. Until today. Until a man on a Harley saw him when everyone else looked away. Eli kept walking. The shelter sat between a laundromat and a bodega. Just a regular building with a sign that said Oak Street Community Center. Nothing special about it. Nothing that screamed safe place. But Preach had said to come here, had said Martha would help. And Preach rode with Rocco. That had to mean something. Eli pushed open the door. Inside it smelled like coffee and cleaning supplies. A woman sat at a desk near the entrance, late 50s, maybe 60, gray hair pulled back, glasses on a chain. She looked up when he walked in, and her face did something Eli had seen 1,000 times. That quick calculation people do when they see a homeless kid. Pity mixed with wariness. Help mixed with hesitation. "Can I help you, sweetheart?" Her voice was kind. That was something. "Are you Martha?" She blinked. "I am." "Who's asking?" "My name's Eli. Preach sent me." Martha's entire demeanor changed. The wariness vanished. She stood up fast, chair scraping back. "Preach sent you." "Yes, ma'am. And Rocco. And some other men. They bought me breakfast and told me to come here." Martha came around the desk, looked him up and down, not judging, assessing. "When's the last time you had a shower, honey?" "Maybe a week." "And where are you sleeping?" "Park, benches, wherever." Martha nodded like she'd heard this story 1,000 times, because she probably had. "How old are you?" 12. "Jesus." She said it soft like a prayer. Then louder. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. First you're going to take a hot shower. Then we're getting you clean clothes. Then you're going to tell me everything. And I mean everything. Deal." Eli's throat went tight. "The system." "I know what you're afraid of," Martha interrupted gently. "And I know what the system does to kids like you. But Preach sent you here for a reason. I've been doing this work for 30 years. I know how to keep kids safe when the system fails them. So I'll ask again. Deal." Eli looked at her. Really looked. Saw something in her eyes that reminded him of Rocco. That same steadiness. That same, "I've been where you are and I survived it" energy. Deal. 20 minutes later, Eli stood underwater so hot it almost hurt. Steam filled the bathroom. He watched dirt spiral down the drain. Watched weeks of street life wash away. His skin turned pink from scrubbing. When he finally got out, clean clothes waited on the bench. Jeans that fit. A t-shirt that didn't have holes. Socks without worn-through heels. Underwear still in the package. He got dressed slowly, almost afraid to believe this was real. When he came out, Martha had food waiting. Soup, crackers, apple slices. Nothing fancy, but after eating too fast at the diner, his stomach needed simple. He sat down at a small table. Martha sat across from him. "Tell me," she said simply. So he did. Started with his mom leaving 3 months ago. The group home, running away, sleeping in the park, going 3 days without food, walking into that diner, Curtis grabbing him, the bikers showing up. Martha listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That manager," she said finally. "Curtis Doyle. I know him." Eli looked up surprised. "He came here once," Martha continued. "About 5 years ago. His wife had just left him. He was angry, broken, needed help processing all that rage." She shook her head. "I tried to tell him that hurt people, that he needed to deal with his pain before it turned him into someone he didn't recognize. He didn't want to hear it. Said feelings were weakness, said the world didn't care about your pain, so why should he care about anyone else's?" What happened to him? He bought that diner, threw himself into work, used it as armor against having to feel anything. Martha looked sad. "And this morning you walked into his restaurant and reminded him that armor doesn't protect you. It just makes you cold." Eli thought about that. About Curtis's face when the bikers made him bring Eli back inside. About the shame that had flickered there before fear took over. "Do you think people can change?" Eli asked. "I think people can change when they want to, badly enough," Martha said carefully. "But wanting to change and actually doing the work are two different things." Curtis saw himself today through someone else's eyes. Whether that's enough to make him look in the mirror and do something about what he sees, that's up to him. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "But you know what matters more than whether Curtis changes, whether you survive this, whether you make it out of childhood intact. That's what we need to focus on." "The system will come looking for me," Eli said quietly. "Let them look. I've got lawyers, good ones. Pro bono folks who believe kids shouldn't be thrown back into situations that harm them." Martha's voice turned fierce. "And I've got Rocco's number in my phone from 6 years ago when he helped me track down a missing kid. If they try to take you somewhere unsafe, we'll fight it. All of us." Something broke open in Eli's chest. Some locked door he'd been guarding for months. "Why?" The word came out cracked. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." Martha smiled. "I know you well enough. You're a 12-year-old boy who asked for leftover bread instead of stealing it, who said sir and ma'am even when you were starving, who survived 3 months on the streets and didn't let it make you mean. That tells me everything I need to know." Eli started crying, not gentle tears, the ugly kind, the kind that had been building for 3 months, for 12 years, the kind that comes from finally being seen by someone who gives a damn. Martha got up and hugged him, just held him while he sobbed. Didn't tell him to stop, didn't tell him to be strong, just held him like his mother should have, like someone should have, like he mattered. Across town, Curtis Doyle was still sitting in his office. The lunch rush had started. Sarah was handling it. She was good at that. Better than him if he was honest. She actually liked people, remembered their orders, asked about their kids, made them feel welcome. He used to do that, years ago, before his wife left, before the bitterness set in like rot. Curtis pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, stopped on one name, Linda, his ex-wife. Hadn't spoken to her in 4 years, not since the divorce finalized, not since she told him she couldn't watch him turn into someone she didn't recognize. "You're so angry all the time," she'd said, "at me, at the world, at people who need help. When did you become this person, Curtis? When did you stop caring?" He'd told her to get out, told her if she couldn't handle reality, that was her problem, not his. Now his thumb hovered over her name. What would he even say? "Hey, I threw a starving kid out of my restaurant this morning, and a biker gang had to teach me basic human decency." He locked his phone, put it down. The door to his office opened. Sarah stood there, face flushed. "We need to talk." Curtis looked up. "It's the lunch rush." "I don't care. We're talking now." Sarah shut the door behind her, crossed her arms, and the look on her face was something Curtis had never seen before. Anger, real anger. "That boy," she said. "Eli. What you did to him this morning was cruel." "Sarah, I don't need a lecture." "Yes, you do, because I've worked here for 2 years, and I've watched you turn into someone uglier every single day. You snap at customers. You're rude to suppliers. You treat me like I'm stupid, even though I do half your job and you know it." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "But this morning, throwing out a hungry child, that's not just mean, Curtis. That's evil." Curtis stood up. "Watch how you talk to me, or what you'll fire me. Go ahead, I can get another waitress job tomorrow. But you know what you can't get. A conscience, self-respect, the ability to look in the mirror without hating what you see." The words hit like punches. "I've got bills to pay," Curtis said, but his voice came out weak. "I can't give handouts to every person who walks through that door." He didn't ask for a handout, he asked for garbage, food you were throwing away, and you couldn't even give him that. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "My mom raised me on food stamps. We went to food banks. We took charity. And you know what? People who helped us when we needed it most, they're the reason I'm standing here. They're the reason I didn't give up. They're the reason I believe the world has good people in it." She wiped her eyes angrily. "You had a chance to be one of those people this morning, and you chose cruelty. You chose your pride, your anger, your whatever the hell made you think it was okay to treat a child like trash." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "I'm not quitting, but I'm telling you right now, if you ever do something like that again, I'm gone. And I'll tell everyone why. Every customer, every supplier, everyone who'll listen." She walked out and slammed the door. Curtis sat back down. His hands were shaking. He told himself Sarah didn't understand business, didn't understand how hard he'd worked, didn't understand that the world would eat you alive if you showed weakness. But the words felt hollow even as he thought them. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Rocco. Just checking you remember our conversation. That boy matters. Every kid who walks through your door matters. Don't make me come back." Curtis stared at the message. Then, without quite knowing why, he opened his browser, typed Oak Street Community Center, found their website, read about Martha, about the work she did, about the kids she helped. There was a donation button. Curtis looked at it for a long time. Then he closed the browser. Not today. Maybe never. He didn't know yet. But something in him had cracked, something that had been frozen for years. And he didn't know if that crack would widen or if he'd seal it back up with the same anger that had protected him for so long. He didn't know what he'd do tomorrow, but he knew he'd never forget today. At the shelter, Eli finished his soup. Martha showed him to a small room with a bed. A real bed. With sheets, a pillow, a blanket. "This is yours for now," Martha said. "We'll figure out the details later. Right now, you need rest." Eli sat on the bed. It felt strange, soft, safe. He couldn't remember the last time he'd slept somewhere that felt safe. "Martha." "Yeah, honey." "What Rocco said, about someone helping him when he was young. Is that true?" Martha smiled. Every word. He was 14, living on the streets after his father beat him half to death. A woman named Grace owned a motorcycle shop. She found Rocco sleeping behind her dumpster. Could have called the cops. Instead, she gave him a job, taught him about bikes, gave him a place to stay, saved his life. What happened to her? She died about 15 years ago, cancer. But before she went, she told Rocco the same thing someone told her when she was young and needed help. Pay it forward, when you can help someone the way I helped you. And that's what he's been doing ever since. And now he's helping me. Now he's helping you, Martha agreed. And someday when you're older and you've got your feet under you, maybe you'll help someone too. That's how it works. That's how good spreads. One person at a time. One moment of kindness that echoes forward. Eli lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling, thought about Rocco and Grace and Martha, and even Sarah, who'd packed him extra cookies. Thought about chains of kindness, stretching back through time, connecting people who'd never meet, creating ripples that spread further than anyone could see. I want to do that, he said quietly. When I'm older. I want to help someone. You will, Martha said. I believe that. She turned off the light, started to close the door. Martha, yeah, thank you. Get some sleep, Eli. The door closed. The room went dark. And for the first time in 3 months, Eli closed his eyes without being afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Across town, Rocco Kane sat in his garage working on a bike. It was late afternoon now. The sun slanted through the windows at that golden angle that made everything look softer than it was. His phone rang. He checked the caller ID. Martha. Tell me, he said by way of greeting. He's safe, fed, clean, sleeping. I've got him. Rocco nodded even though she couldn't see him. Good. What you did this morning. I didn't do anything anyone else wouldn't do. That's a lie and we both know it. Martha's voice was firm. Most people walked right past that boy. You stopped. You saw him. That matters, Rocco. Grace taught me that, Rocco said quietly. She taught me that seeing people is half the battle. Most folks are so wrapped up in their own lives they don't notice when someone's drowning right in front of them. Well, you noticed. And that kid's alive because of it. Literally. Another few days on the streets without food. We both know where that leads. Rocco's jaw tightened. Yeah. He knew. He'd seen kids die from exposure, from starvation, from giving up. Seen it more times than he could count. The world chewed up children and spit them out, and most people pretended not to see it happening. Keep me updated, he said. If he needs anything, I will. And Rocco, I checked in with the guys at the diner, that manager Curtis. He's struggling with what happened. Good. Man should struggle. Maybe. Or maybe he's on the edge of changing. People change when they're forced to look at themselves. Sometimes shame is the thing that saves them. Rocco grunted. Didn't agree or disagree. He'd seen shame destroy as many people as it saved. Either way, Martha continued, you did right today. Grace would be proud. After they hung up, Rocco sat there for a while, thinking about Grace, about the day she found him behind her shop, bloody and broken, terrified of going home, about how she hadn't asked questions at first, just brought him inside, cleaned him up, fed him, made him feel human again. She died in 2010, 15 years ago now, but not a week went by that he didn't think about her, didn't try to live up to the example she'd set. The garage door opened. Hawk walked in, followed by Ghost and Preach. Heard you had quite a morning, Hawk said. Word travels fast. Small town. Plus, Sarah posted about it on Facebook. The whole thing's blowing up online. Rocco looked up sharply. What? Ghost held up his phone, showed him the screen. Sarah had written a long post about what happened, about the boy, about Curtis throwing him out, about the bikers stepping in, about how sometimes angels wear leather instead of wings. The post had been shared 400 times. The comments section was blowing up. People are calling the diner, Ghost said. Some to yell at Curtis, some to praise what we did. It's a whole thing. Rocco swore under his breath. I didn't do it for attention. We know, but that's what's happening anyway. Preach sat down on a workbench. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe people need to see that helping matters, that kindness matters, that you can't just walk past suffering and pretend it's not your problem. Or maybe, Hawk rumbled, people will forget about it in a week when the next viral story hits. Maybe, Preach agreed. But that boy won't forget. That kid's gonna carry this morning with him for the rest of his life. Gonna remember that when he had nothing, strangers showed up and gave a damn. That's worth something. That's worth everything. They sat in silence for a while, working on bikes. The comfortable quiet of men who'd ridden together long enough that words weren't always necessary. Finally, Ghost spoke up. You think Curtis will change? Rocco shrugged. Don't know. Don't really care. I didn't do it for him. Did it for the kid. Still, man like that getting shown up in front of his whole diner that either breaks you or makes you, nothing in between. Then we'll see what he's made of, Rocco said. But either way, that boy's safe. That's all that matters. Night fell. The shelter went quiet. Martha locked the doors and did her final rounds. checked on Eli. He was sleeping curled on his side blanket, pulled up to his chin. The food containers from the diner sat on the small desk carefully saved for tomorrow. Martha stood in the doorway for a moment, watching this child breathe, watching him sleep without fear for maybe the first time in months. Then she went to her office and made phone calls, to her lawyers, to social services, to everyone who needed to know that this boy was under her protection now, and they'd have to go through her to get to him. At the diner, Curtis locked up late. The day had been strange. Customers had looked at him differently, some with anger, some with pity, some with disappointment that hurt worse than anger ever could. Sarah had avoided him all day, did her job, but didn't speak to him unless necessary. That hurt too, though he'd never admit it. He drove home, walked into his empty apartment, looked around at the life he'd built. Successful business, money in the bank, everything he was supposed to want. And he'd never felt emptier. His phone sat on the counter where he'd left it. He picked it up, looked at Linda's name again. This time, he pressed call. It rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when she answered. Curtis. Her voice. God, her voice. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed it until he heard it again. Hey, Linda. Is everything okay? You never call. He stopped, started again. Something happened today, something bad, and I need to talk to someone about it. Silence. Then, okay, I'm listening. And Curtis Doyle, who hadn't cried in 8 years, who'd built armor around his heart so thick nothing could get through, started talking. Started telling her about the boy, about the bikers, about the shame that was eating him alive. And Linda listened, just listened, the way she used to, before everything fell apart. And maybe that was a start. Maybe not, but it was something. And sometimes something is enough. Curtis talked for an hour. Linda didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened the way she used to when they were young and still believed they could fix each other. When he finally stopped, his throat was raw and his eyes burned. You still there? He asked. I'm here. Say something. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you remember the night we met? Curtis blinked. That wasn't what he expected. The hospital fundraiser. You were serving drinks. I was serving drinks and you knocked a whole tray out of my hands trying to grab one. Ruined my dress. Cost me $40 to replace it. I paid for the dress. You did, and you asked me out. Took me to that Italian place on 3rd Street. You remember what you said that night? Curtis closed his eyes. I said I wanted to open a restaurant someday. A place where people felt welcome. Where everyone was treated like family. Yeah. You said that. And I believed you. Because your eyes lit up when you talked about it. Like you'd found your purpose. Her voice got softer. What happened to that man, Curtis? Life happened. Marriage ended. Reality set in. No. You gave up. You decided that caring about people was weakness, that kindness was for suckers. You built walls so high nobody could hurt you, and then you wondered why you were lonely. The words stung because they were true. I don't know how to be that person anymore, Curtis said quietly. Then learn. Start tomorrow. Start with one kind thing, then another, then another. Eventually it becomes who you are again. She paused. Or don't. Keep being angry. Keep pushing people away. Die alone in that apartment surrounded by money that never kept you warm at night. Your choice. Linda, I've got to go. I've got work early. But Curtis, I'm glad you called. It means something in you still wants to be better. Don't waste that. She hung up. Curtis sat there holding his phone, looking around his apartment at the life he'd built, the expensive furniture he never enjoyed, the television that kept him company but never made him feel less alone. The silence that pressed down like a weight. He thought about Eli's face when he'd shoved him out the door, that split second before the boy's expression went carefully blank, the humiliation, the shame. The resignation like this was just one more thing the world had done to him. Curtis thought about the bikers, about Rocco looking at him with those hard eyes and saying, a hungry child asked for scraps and you threw him out. He thought about Sarah, about her voice shaking with anger when she called him evil, about how she'd cried when she said it because it broke her heart to see what he'd become. He thought about the elderly woman in the diner who'd squeezed her husband's arm, about the nurse who'd stopped eating, about the businessman who'd walked out without looking back, about all the people who'd watched him be cruel and said nothing but would remember it forever. And Curtis Doyle made a decision. He didn't know if it was the right one, didn't know if it would work, didn't know if he could actually follow through. But he made it anyway. Tomorrow he would try to be better. Just try. That was all he had. Morning came fast. Eli woke up confused about where he was. Then he remembered. The shelter. Martha. Safety. He sat up. Sunlight came through the window. Real sunlight, not the harsh kind that woke you up on a park bench. Gentle light that said you had time. That said you were allowed to exist. Someone knocked on the door. "You decent," Martha's voice. "Yeah." She came in carrying clothes. Real clothes. Jeans without holes. A hoodie that looked new. Sneakers that fit. "Donations," she explained. "People drop off stuff all the time. Figured we'd find you something better than yesterday's emergency stash." Eli took the clothes. They were nice. Really nice. Better than anything he'd owned in months. "Martha, how much does it cost to stay here?" "Nothing. We run on donations and grants. You don't owe me money, Eli. You don't owe anyone anything. But I should help. Do chores or something. I can clean. I'm good at cleaning." Martha smiled. "We'll figure out ways you can contribute. But right now, your job is to be 12 years old, to heal, to remember what it feels like to be safe. Can you do that?" Eli nodded, even though he wasn't sure he remembered what safe felt like anymore. After he got dressed, Martha took him to the cafeteria. Other people were there. Adults mostly. A few teenagers. Everyone looked like they'd been through something. Everyone looked like they were trying to put pieces back together. A woman with a black eye smiled at him. "New here?" "Yeah." "Martha's good people. You'll be okay." Eli got breakfast. Oatmeal, toast, orange juice. He ate slowly this time. His stomach was still adjusting to having food again. An older man sat down across from him. 60 maybe. Gray beard, kind eyes. "Name's Frank. Been here 2 months. Lost my job, lost my apartment, ended up on the streets. I'm Eli. You're the kid from the diner story." Eli looked up sharply. Frank held up his phone. "It's all over social media. That waitress posted about what happened. The whole town's talking about it." Eli's face went hot. "I didn't want attention. I just wanted food." "I know, but sometimes stories matter. Sometimes people need to see that cruelty has consequences, that kindness matters." Frank leaned forward. "I saw what happened to you, kid, and I want you to know something. What that manager did, that wasn't about you, that was about him. His anger, his pain. You just happened to be there when it boiled over. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. But it means you didn't deserve it. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a hungry kid asking for help. Remember that." Eli nodded, finished his breakfast. Frank patted his shoulder and walked away. Martha appeared again. "Got someone here to see you." Eli's stomach dropped. "The system? No, someone else." She led him to a small meeting room. Rocco sat there waiting. He looked different in daylight, older, more tired, but his eyes were the same, steady, sure. "Hey, kid." "Hi." Rocco gestured to the chair. Eli sat. "Wanted to check on you. Make sure Martha's taking care of you." "She is. Everyone here is really nice." "Good, that's good." Rocco leaned back. "I also wanted to talk to you about something. The story's out, about what happened yesterday. Sarah posted it online and now everyone knows." Eli's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "Stop. You didn't cause anything. You were hungry. You asked for help. What happened after that? That's on Curtis. That's on me. That's on everyone who saw you and made a choice, but not on you. Never on you. People are going to think I'm just some charity case now. People are going to think whatever they think, can't control that. But here's what you can control. How you move forward. What you do with this chance you've been given. Rocco leaned forward. Martha tells me you're smart. That you asked if you could do chores to earn your keep. That tells me you've got pride. Character. That matters, Eli. That matters more than anything. I just don't want to be a burden. You're not. You're a kid who needed help, and accepting help isn't weakness, it's survival. You understand? Eli nodded slowly. Good. Now, Martha's got you enrolled in school starting Monday. You're gonna go. You're gonna do the work. You're gonna build yourself a future. And if anyone gives you trouble, you call me. Got it? School, Eli repeated. He hadn't been to school in 3 months. The thought terrified him. I know it's scary, but you can't let fear run your life. You face it. You walk through it. You come out the other side stronger. Is that what you did? Rocco smiled. Not a happy smile. A survived smile. Yeah, that's what I did. Had to face a lot of fear in my life. Still do. But I learned that fear loses its power when you stop running from it. They talked for another 20 minutes. About school, about the shelter, about what came next. When Rocco stood to leave, he put his hand on Eli's shoulder. You're gonna be okay, kid. I believe that. Question is, do you... Eli thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm starting to, he said finally. That's all anyone can ask. After Rocco left, Eli sat in the meeting room for a while, processing, thinking, feeling things he hadn't let himself feel in months, because feelings were dangerous when you were trying to survive. But maybe he wasn't just surviving anymore. Maybe he was living. Across town, Curtis opened the diner an hour early. Sarah arrived for her shift and stopped short when she saw him mopping the floor. You're mopping? Yeah. You never mop. I'm mopping today. She stared at him. What's going on? Curtis wrung out the mop, put it away, turned to face her. I called Linda last night, told her what happened, what I did. His voice was steady but quiet. She asked me what happened to the man I used to be, the one who wanted to make people feel welcome, and I didn't have an answer. Sarah's expression softened slightly. So what now? So now I try to be that person again, starting today. How? Curtis pulled an envelope from his pocket, handed it to her. Sarah opened it. Inside was $500 cash. What is this? Raise. Effective immediately. You've been doing half my job for 2 years and I never acknowledged it. That changes now. Sarah's eyes widened. Curtis, also, I want you to know I called Oak Street Community Center this morning, made a donation, $5,000, in the boy's name, Eli. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. It doesn't fix what I did, Curtis continued. Nothing fixes that. But maybe it helps. Maybe it means something. I don't know. He paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just telling you I'm trying. Why? Because I looked in the mirror this morning and hated what I saw. Because my ex-wife told me I gave up on being a decent human being. Because a 12-year-old boy asked me for garbage and I treated him like he was garbage. Curtis's voice cracked. Because I don't want to die alone and angry in that apartment wondering why nobody came to my funeral. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she folded the envelope and put it in her pocket. Okay. I'll give you a chance. One chance. You prove this isn't just guilt. You prove you actually mean it. And we'll see. Curtis nodded. Fair. The morning rush started. Curtis worked differently. Greeted people by name, asked about their families, smiled, actually smiled. Some customers were surprised, some were skeptical. Some had read the story online and watched him carefully waiting to see if this was real or performance. An elderly couple came in, the same ones from yesterday. They hesitated at the door. Curtis walked over. Good morning, table for 2. The woman studied his face. You're really the one who threw out that boy. Yes, ma'am. I am. Why, Curtis could have made excuses, could have defended himself. Instead, he told the truth. Because I was angry, bitter, and I took it out on a child who didn't deserve it. He met her eyes. I was wrong. I'm trying to do better. The husband grunted. Trying doesn't undo what you did. No, sir. It doesn't. But it's all I've got. The couple looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, the woman nodded. Table for two, then. Curtis seated them, brought them coffee, took their order, treated them the way he should have treated Eli yesterday. When they finished eating, the woman left him a $10 tip on a $15 check. She didn't say anything. Didn't have to. The gesture said enough. Curtis stood there looking at that $10 like it was a lifeline. Maybe it was. At the shelter, Eli spent the day getting settled. Martha introduced him to other kids, showed him how things worked, where the library was, where the computer room was, where he could go if he needed quiet. In the afternoon, a woman arrived. Professional clothes, briefcase. Martha introduced her as Teresa Garcia, one of the pro bono lawyers. They sat in the meeting room. Teresa pulled out papers. I've reviewed your case, Eli. The foster system has you listed as a runaway. They'll want you back in the group home. Eli's chest tightened. I can't go back there. I know. Martha told me what happened. The bullying, the theft, the neglect. Teresa's voice was firm. We're going to fight this. File for emancipation. Argue that the system failed to protect you and that you're better off here under Martha's guardianship. Will it work? I don't know. Judges are unpredictable, but we've got a strong case. You're articulate, mature. You've demonstrated ability to survive. And you've got community support. She paused. That story that went viral. It helps. Shows you have people looking out for you. Shows what happens when the system fails, kids like you. I didn't want that story out there. I know. But sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the thing you didn't want becomes the thing that saves you. They talked for another hour. About court dates, about what to expect, about how to prepare. When Teresa left, Eli felt exhausted, but something else too. Hope. That evening, Martha took him shopping. They went to Target, got him more clothes, toiletries, school supplies, a backpack. At the checkout, Eli watched the total climb. $40, $60, $80. Martha, this is too much. It's what you need, and the center's budget covers it. Stop worrying. But Eli couldn't stop worrying. Couldn't stop feeling like he owed everyone everything. Like he was taking up space he hadn't earned. Martha must have seen it on his face because she stopped walking, put her hand on his shoulder. Listen to me. You know why I do this work? Why I run that shelter? Eli shook his head. Because when I was 17, I was you. Homeless, scared, hungry. A woman named Ruth took me in, fed me, clothed me, got me back in school, saved my life. Martha's eyes got bright. Ruth died 10 years ago. But before she went, she told me, don't waste your life trying to pay me back. Pay it forward. Help someone else the way I helped you. So that's what I do. That's my purpose. You're not taking from me, Eli. You're giving me the chance to honor Ruth's memory, to keep that chain of kindness going. You understand? Eli nodded, throat tight. Good. Now let's get you some decent shoes. Those sneakers are falling apart. They drove back to the shelter as the sun set. Eli carried his bags to his room, unpacked slowly, put clothes in the small dresser, set up his school supplies, lined up his new shoes. It felt surreal, like playing house. Like any second someone would tell him this was a mistake, and he'd have to go back to sleeping on benches. But nobody came. Nobody took it away. It was real. That night, lying in his bed, Eli thought about everything that had happened. Curtis throwing him out, Rocco stepping in, Martha taking him in, Sarah packing him cookies, the businessman giving him money, the nurse raising her coffee cup, the elderly woman crying. All these people, all these choices, all these moments that added up to something he never thought he'd have again. A chance. He fell asleep thinking about what he'd do with it. At the diner, Curtis closed up late again. But this time was different. This time he didn't feel empty. He felt exhausted, yes, but also something else. Purpose. He'd worked hard today, treated people well, made amends where he could. It wasn't enough to erase yesterday. Nothing would be. But it was something. His phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Heard you made a donation to the shelter. That's a start. Proud of you. Curtis stared at those words. Proud of you. When was the last time anyone said that to him? When was the last time he deserved it? He texted back, coffee sometime. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thursday, 10 a.m., don't be late. Curtis smiled. Actually smiled. It felt strange on his face, foreign, but good. He drove home. But this time he didn't see an empty apartment. He saw possibility, the chance to rebuild, to become someone he could respect again. It would take time. He knew that. You didn't undo years of anger in a day. But you could start. You could try. And trying was better than drowning. That night, 3 people went to sleep in the same town, their lives forever changed by one moment, by one choice, by one child asking for bread. Eli slept in a real bed dreaming of school and futures and possibilities. Curtis slept in his apartment dreaming of the man he used to be and might become again. And Rocco slept in his house dreaming of Grace, hoping she could see what he'd done, hoping she was proud. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not the money or the attention or the viral story, but the fact that when someone needed help, someone else stepped up. That when cruelty happened, kindness answered. That in a world that often felt dark and broken, light still existed. In the hands of bikers who saw a hungry child. In the hearts of shelter workers who refused to give up. In the conscience of a bitter man who finally looked in the mirror and decided to change. Light existed, and sometimes that was enough. The story wasn't over, not by a long shot. Eli still had to face school, the court case, the uncertainty of what came next. Curtis still had to prove this change was real. To Sarah, to Linda, to himself. But for now, in this moment, they had something they didn't have yesterday. Hope. And hope, as it turned out, was the most powerful thing of all. Monday morning came too fast. Eli woke up with his stomach in knots. School. He hadn't been to school in 3 months. Hadn't sat in a classroom or opened a textbook or talked to kids his own age in so long he'd forgotten what normal felt like. Martha knocked on his door at 6:30. You up? Yeah. Breakfast in 10. Then we leave at 7:15. Eli got dressed in his new clothes, jeans that fit, a hoodie that didn't have holes, shoes that weren't held together with tape. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. Clean, fed, almost like a regular kid. Almost. In the cafeteria, Frank was already eating. He waved Eli over. Big day. Yeah. You nervous? Terrified. Frank laughed. Not mean. Understanding. I remember my first day back at work after I got sober. Thought everyone would see right through me, see the mess I'd been. But you know what? Most people are too wrapped up in their own stuff to judge yours. What if they saw the story? What if everyone knows? Then they know. Can't change that. But here's the thing, kid. That story, it's not about you being weak. It's about you surviving, about you being strong enough to ask for help. That takes guts. Eli ate his cereal slowly. His stomach was too tight to taste anything. Martha drove him to Lincoln Middle School, pulled up to the curb. Kids were everywhere, talking, laughing, being normal, being 12. You ready? Martha asked. No. Good. That means you're paying attention. Come on, I'll walk you to the office. Inside, the principal was waiting. Ms. Chen, 40-something. Kind face but tired eyes. She'd seen too many kids like Eli. Kids who fell through cracks. Kids who disappeared. Eli Patterson, welcome. I've reviewed your file. You're in 7th grade, correct? Yes, ma'am. Your test scores from last year are good, very good. You're smart, Eli. That's going to help you catch up on what you've missed. She handed him a schedule. I've put you in classes that match your ability level. If anything's too hard or too easy, we'll adjust. Okay. Also, Ms. Chen's voice got gentler. I know your situation. I know what happened at the diner. Some kids here might know too. If anyone gives you trouble, you come directly to me. Understood? Eli nodded. Martha squeezed his shoulder. You've got this. I'll pick you up at 3. Then she was gone and Eli was alone in a hallway full of strangers. His first class was English. He walked in 5 minutes late because he'd gotten lost. Every head turned to stare. The teacher, Mr. Patterson, smiled. You must be Eli. Have a seat anywhere. Eli found an empty desk in the back, slid into it, tried to make himself invisible. The girl next to him leaned over. You're the kid from the diner story, right? Eli's face went hot. Yeah. That manager's a jerk. My mom says she's never eating there again. The girl stuck out her hand. I'm Jenna. Eli. I know, everyone knows. You're like famous. I don't want to be famous. Too late. But she said it kindly. Not mocking, just factual. Mr. Patterson started class. They were reading The Outsiders. Eli had read it last year, loved it. The story of kids who didn't fit in, kids who survived, kids who found family in unexpected places. He raised his hand when Mr. Patterson asked a question about Ponyboy, gave an answer. Mr. Patterson's eyebrows went up. Excellent analysis, Eli. You've read this before. Yes, sir, last year. Well, we're lucky to have you. Your perspective will be valuable. For the first time all morning, Eli felt something other than fear. He felt capable, like maybe he belonged here. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Math, history, science. Each teacher had clearly been briefed about him. Each one treated him normally, but kept a watchful eye, making sure he was okay, making sure other kids weren't cruel. Lunch was harder. The cafeteria was chaos. Noise and movement and social hierarchies Eli couldn't decode. He got his tray and looked around for somewhere to sit. Jenna waved him over. She sat with 3 other kids, 2 girls and a boy. This is Eli. Eli, this is Maya, Sarah, and Derek. They all nodded, made room for him. So, Derek said immediately, those bikers. Hell's Angels, right? That's so cool. I guess. You guessed, dude, they're legends. My uncle's a biker. Says Hell's Angels don't mess around. You got lucky they showed up. I know. Maya leaned forward. What was it like, being that hungry? The table went quiet. The question was too direct, too raw. But Maya's face showed genuine curiosity, not cruelty. It's like... Eli struggled for words. Like you're disappearing. Like you're becoming less real every day. Like the world's erasing you and nobody notices. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Sarah, the other girl, said quietly, My dad lost his job last year. We went to food banks for 6 months. I remember being scared we'd end up on the streets. It was the worst feeling in the world. Did you? Eli asked. No. My dad found work again, but it was close. Really close. She looked at him with understanding. I'm glad you're okay now. Thanks. They ate, talked about normal stuff. Teachers they liked and didn't like. A test coming up in science. A dance next month. Normal kid stuff. And slowly, Eli started to feel like maybe he could do this. Maybe he could be normal again. After lunch in the hallway, a kid bumped into him. Hard. On purpose. Watch it, charity case. Eli turned. The kid was bigger. 8th grader maybe. Sneering. I said watch it. I heard you. You think you're special because some bikers felt sorry for you. You're nothing. Just another homeless loser. Jenna stepped between them. Back off, Tyler. Or what you gonna call your biker friends? Tyler laughed. Face it, nobody actually cares about you. They just want to feel good about themselves. Give it a week and everyone will forget you exist. The words hit harder than fists. Hit the fear Eli had been carrying since the diner. That this was temporary. That kindness had an expiration date. That eventually everyone would realize he wasn't worth saving. But before he could respond, a voice cut through the hallway. Tyler Morrison, principal's office, now. Ms. Chen stood there with arms crossed. Her face was calm, but her eyes were fire. Tyler's sneer disappeared. I didn't do anything, so office, now. We're calling your parents. Tyler slunk away. Ms. Chen turned to Eli. You okay? Yeah. No, you're not, but you will be. Come with me. In her office, Ms. Chen sat down across from him. Tyler's been bullying kids for 2 years. We've tried everything. Suspensions, parent conferences. Nothing works. This is his last chance. If he does it again, he's expelled. I don't want to cause trouble. Stop. You're not causing anything. Tyler's causing trouble. Tyler's choosing to be cruel. You're just trying to survive. Big difference. She leaned forward. Listen to me, Eli. You're going to meet people like Tyler your whole life. People who try to tear you down because they're miserable. Don't let them win. Don't let them make you small. You matter. You deserve to be here, and anyone who says otherwise can deal with me. Eli nodded, throat tight. Good. Now get to class. And Eli, you did well today, really well. The afternoon was easier. Tyler wasn't in any of his classes. The other kids had warmed up to him after seeing Jenna's group accept him. By the time Martha picked him up at 3, Eli was exhausted, but okay. How'd it go? Martha asked as they drove back to the shelter. Good. Mostly good. Mostly. He told her about Tyler, about what he'd said. Martha's jaw tightened. That boy's got his own demons. Doesn't excuse what he did, but explains it. Hurt people hurt people. That's what Frank said about Curtis. Frank's right. But here's the thing. Understanding why someone's cruel doesn't mean you have to accept the cruelty. You can have compassion and boundaries at the same time. At the shelter, Eli did homework in his room. Math problems, a history worksheet, an essay about the outsiders. He wrote about how Ponyboy learned that people are more than their circumstances. That being poor or different doesn't make you less human. He wondered if he was writing about Ponyboy or himself. That evening, Rocco called Martha's office. She put him on speaker so Eli could hear. How was school, kid? Good. Hard, but good. That's all you can ask for. You go back tomorrow. Yeah. Then you go back. Every day. No matter how hard it gets. You hear me? Education is your way out. Your ticket to a better life. Don't waste it. I won't. Good. Now, I got news. The court date for your emancipation hearing is set. 3 weeks from now. Teresa says you need to prepare. She's going to come by this week to help you. Eli's stomach dropped. What if the judge says no? What if I have to go back? Then we fight harder. Appeal. File again. Keep fighting until we win. But that's not going to happen. You got Martha, you got Teresa, you got me. You got a whole community backing you up. Judge sees that he'll see you're in good hands. After they hung up, Eli sat in his room thinking about the hearing. About having to convince a stranger that he deserved to stay here. That he was worth the effort. 3 weeks. 21 days. It felt like forever, and no time at all. Across town, Curtis met Linda at a coffee shop. She was already there when he arrived. She looked good. Older than he remembered, but good. She'd cut her hair short. It suited her. Hi, he said, sitting down. Hi. They ordered coffee, sat in awkward silence for a minute. Finally, Linda spoke. So, you're trying to change. Yeah. Why? Because I looked in the mirror and hated what I saw. Because I hurt a child and can't undo it. Because I don't want to die angry and alone. Curtis met her eyes. Because you were right about all of it. I gave up, decided kindness was weakness, built walls so high nobody could reach me, and then I wondered why I was lonely. Linda sipped her coffee. What are you doing differently? Treating people better at the diner, smiling, actually caring, made a donation to the shelter where that boy is staying. Gave Sarah a raise. He paused. And I called you, which is probably the hardest thing I've done. Why was it hard? Because I'm ashamed of what I became, of how I treated you, of pushing away the best thing in my life because I was too scared to be vulnerable. Linda's eyes got bright. You never said stuff like that when we were married, never admitted fear, Never showed weakness. I know. I thought weakness would destroy me. Turns out it was strength that almost did. They talked for 2 hours. About their marriage, about what went wrong, about his anger and her pain and all the ways they'd failed each other. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was honest. Real. When they finally left, Linda hugged him. Quick, but genuine. I'm not saying we can fix this, she said. I'm not even saying I want to try, but I'm saying I see you trying, and that matters. That's all I can ask for. Curtis drove back to the diner. Evening rush was starting. Sarah was handling it well, but looked stressed. He jumped in without being asked, helped with orders, cleared tables, made people feel welcome. An elderly couple came in, different from the one who'd left him the $10 tip, but similar age, similar vibe. Curtis seated them, brought water, took their order. The woman watched him carefully. You're the owner, the one from that story. Here it comes, Curtis thought. Yes, ma'am. What you did to that boy was wrong. Yes, ma'am. It was. But I hear you're trying to make amends, donated money to the shelter. That true? Yes, ma'am. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Good. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after. When they left, they tipped well and told him the food was excellent. Curtis stood there holding that tip, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not pride exactly, more like possibility. The possibility that redemption was real, that change was possible, that people could forgive if you proved you meant it. At the shelter, Eli lay in bed, unable to sleep. Tomorrow was Tuesday. More school. More navigating social dynamics he'd forgotten how to manage. More trying to be normal when he felt anything but. But also he had people now. Jenna and her friends. Martha and Frank. Teresa and Rocco. Sarah and the elderly woman and the nurse, and even the businessman who'd given him $40. He had a community. Had people who gave a damn. That was more than he'd had 3 days ago. More than he'd had in months. He thought about what Rocco said about Grace, about how one person helping him had changed everything, had set him on a path that led to helping others, had created a chain of kindness that stretched across decades. Maybe that's what was happening now. Maybe Curtis throwing him out had somehow started something, forced people to choose, to decide what kind of humans they wanted to be. And maybe, just maybe, enough people had chosen kindness that it would ripple outward, touch more lives, create more moments of grace. Eli didn't know, couldn't know. But lying there in his bed with a full stomach and clean clothes and a future that looked possible for the first time in months, he thought maybe the world wasn't as dark as he'd believed. Maybe light existed in unexpected places, in bikers who stopped for hungry kids, in shelter workers who refused to give up, in bitter men who finally looked in mirrors and decided to change, in 7th graders who made room at their lunch table, in judges who might see that systems failed and choose mercy. Maybe light was everywhere if you knew how to look for it. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange blur. School became routine. Eli settled into classes, made more friends, caught up on work he'd missed, found out he was good at math and science, found out he liked debate class because arguing made sense when there were rules. Tyler avoided him after getting suspended for 3 days. When he came back, he didn't apologize, but he didn't bother Eli anymore either. That was enough. Curtis kept trying, kept being kind, kept showing up. Some customers forgave him, some didn't. Some would never eat at his diner again, and he accepted that. Deserved that. But enough people gave him a second chance that business stayed steady. He and Linda met for coffee twice more, then dinner. They weren't back together. Might never be. But they were talking. Really talking. Trying to remember who they'd been before anger poisoned everything. Martha worked with Teresa to prepare for the hearing. They gathered evidence, character references, documentation of Eli's progress in school, proof that the group home had failed to protect him. Built a case that was airtight as they could make it. Rocco checked in weekly, sometimes in person, sometimes by phone, making sure Eli was okay, making sure the shelter had what it needed, making sure Curtis stayed on the path he'd started. And then finally the day came. The courthouse was intimidating. All marble and echoes and serious-faced people in suits. Eli wore dress pants and a button-down shirt Martha had bought him. Felt like playing dress-up, like pretending to be someone he wasn't. Teresa met them in the hallway. "You ready?" "No." "Good answer. Honesty will serve you well in there." She squeezed his shoulder. "Just tell the truth. Answer the questions. The judge is fair. He'll listen." They walked into the courtroom. The judge sat high behind his bench. Judge Morrison. 60-something. Gray hair, reading glasses. He looked stern, but not unkind. The social worker from the group home was there. Ms. Peterson. She'd tried to seem concerned when Eli first arrived 3 months ago. Tried to seem like she cared. But her caseload was too high and her budget too low and her energy too depleted to actually help. She stood when the judge asked about Eli's time in the home. "Eli was placed with us in July after his mother abandoned him. He stayed for 2 weeks. We provided meals, shelter, counseling, but he ran away without explanation. We've been searching for him since." "And why did he run away?" Judge Morrison asked. "I couldn't say, Your Honor. Sometimes kids in the system act out." "Ms. Patterson, I'd like to hear from you now." Teresa stood. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like Eli to tell his own story." Judge Morrison nodded. "Go ahead, son. Come up here." Eli walked to the witness stand on shaking legs, put his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat down. "Eli," Judge Morrison said gently, "tell me why you ran away from the group home." So Eli did. Told him about the older kids stealing his shoes, about asking for help and being ignored, about counselors who had 80 kids each and couldn't remember his name, about feeling invisible, about feeling like nobody cared if he lived or died. "Did you tell anyone before you ran?" "I told Ms. Peterson. She said kids take things from each other and I needed to toughen up." Judge Morrison looked at Ms. Peterson. "Is that true?" "I don't recall that specific conversation, Your Honor. But it's possible. Given my caseload, yes. It's possible things slip through cracks." "Things." Judge Morrison's voice got harder. "This is a child, not a thing." Ms. Peterson went pale. The judge turned back to Eli. "Tell me about the shelter, about Martha." Eli talked about Oak Street, about feeling safe for the first time in months, about going back to school, about Teresa helping him, about having structure and support and people who actually saw him. "And these bikers I've read about in the case file, Hell's Angels. Tell me about that." Eli told the story. About asking for bread, about Curtis throwing him out, about Rocco stepping in, about the meal, about the kindness that saved him. Judge Morrison listened without interrupting. When Eli finished, the judge was quiet for a long moment. "Ms. Garcia, I've reviewed your petition. You're asking for emancipation with Martha Hernandez as guardian. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you believe this is in Eli's best interest?" "Absolutely. The system failed him. Martha has provided stability, safety, and support. Eli is thriving under her care. His grades are excellent. He's engaged in school. He's seeing a therapist to process trauma. He has a community backing him. Sending him back to the group home would be devastating and potentially dangerous." Judge Morrison looked at Ms. Peterson. "Do you dispute any of this?" "Your Honor, we do our best with limited resources." "That's not what I asked. Do you dispute that Eli is better off with Martha than in your facility?" Ms. Peterson hesitated, then quietly, "No, Your Honor." Judge Morrison nodded, looked at his notes, looked at Eli. "Son, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen a lot of kids come through this courtroom. Some make it, some don't. You want to know what makes the difference?" "Yes, sir." "Community. Having people who give a damn. You've got that now. And I'll be damned if I send you back to a system that couldn't protect you." He banged his gavel. Petition for emancipation is granted. Martha Hernandez is awarded temporary guardianship pending permanent arrangements. We'll review this case in 6 months. Eli stays at Oak Street. Eli couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words echoed in his head. He stays. He stays. He gets to stay. Teresa was hugging him. Martha was crying. Frank, who'd come to watch, was clapping. Even the bailiff smiled. Outside the courtroom, Martha held him tight. "You did it, honey. You're safe now." "We did it," Eli corrected. "All of us." And that's when he saw them, standing at the end of the hallway. Rocco, Hawk, Ghost, Preach. 4 bikers in leather vests waiting to hear the verdict. Rocco walked over. "Well, I get to stay." Rocco's face didn't change, but his eyes did. Something soft appeared there, something gentle. "Good. That's real good, kid." He put his hand on Eli's shoulder. "You keep your head down. Keep working hard. Make something of this chance. You hear me? I hear you. And remember what I told you. Pay it forward. Someday when you can, you help someone else. Keep that chain going." "I will, I promise." The bikers left, walked down the hallway and out of the courthouse. Eli watched them go, watched them disappear into whatever came next in their lives. And standing there with Martha's arm around him, with Teresa beaming, with Frank patting his back, Eli finally understood what Rocco meant about grace, about how one moment of kindness could change everything, about how helping someone wasn't just about them. It was about who they'd become, who they'd help, how far the ripples would spread. Curtis had thrown him out, but Rocco had brought him back in, and that decision, that choice, that moment had saved his life. Eli would spend the rest of his life trying to deserve it, and maybe someday he'd save someone else, and the chain would continue, and light would keep spreading, one person at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. That's how the world changed. That's how darkness lost. That's how grace won. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book Eli never thought he'd get to read. School became less terrifying and more routine. He made honor roll in October. November brought a science fair where his project on water purification won 2nd place. December meant finals he actually studied for in a warm room with a desk and a lamp that worked. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. Christmas at the shelter was different than he'd imagined. Martha decorated the common room with lights and a tree. Donations poured in from the community. Toys for the younger kids. Gift cards for the older ones. A sense that people remembered them even when cameras weren't watching. On Christmas morning, Eli woke up to find a package on his desk. No card. Just a box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was a leather jacket. Not new. Worn in all the right places. Patches on the sleeves. And on the back, stitched in silver thread, a single word: brother. Eli knew who it was from, knew without being told. He wore it to breakfast. Frank saw it and whistled low. "That's a Hell's Angels jacket, kid. You know what that means." "What it means they claimed you, means you're family now, means if you ever need anything, ever, they got your back." Frank shook his head, smiling. Not many people get that honor. Eli touched the word on his back. Brother. He'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten what family felt like. Now he had Martha, Frank, Teresa, Rocco and his crew, Jenna and her friends at school, Sarah at the diner who still slipped him cookies when he stopped by. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up, who stayed, who chose you when they didn't have to. That afternoon, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Merry Christmas, kid. Wear that jacket proud. You earned it. Rocco." Eli texted back, "Thank you for everything." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Don't thank me. Pay it forward. That's all I ask." Eli stared at those words. Pay it forward. He'd heard them so many times now. From Rocco. From Martha. From Judge Morrison at the hearing. from Frank over breakfast conversations. Everyone kept saying it like it was a commandment, a sacred duty. And maybe it was. That evening, Martha found him in the common room staring at the Christmas tree. "You okay, honey?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how different this is from last Christmas. Last year my mom was still around but checked out. We didn't have a tree, didn't have presents. She forgot it was Christmas until the day after." Eli's voice was quiet. "I thought that was just how life was going to be forever. Lonely, empty, like I didn't matter to anyone." Martha sat down next to him. "And now I'm here, with you, with people who care. It's like I'm living someone else's life. Like any second I'm going to wake up back on that park bench. You're not. This is real. This is your life now. You get to keep it. But why me? Why did I get lucky? There are other kids out there right now sleeping in parks, going hungry. Why did Rocco stop for me and not them?" Martha was quiet for a moment. "I used to ask Ruth the same thing. Why me? Why did she save me when so many others needed saving? You know what she said? She said, 'I can't save everyone. Nobody can. But I can save you. And maybe you'll save someone else. And maybe they'll save someone else. And eventually maybe enough people get saved that the world looks a little different.'" Martha squeezed his hand. "That's all we can do, Eli. Save the person in front of us. Then trust them to pass it on." "I want to," Eli said. "I want to help people the way everyone helped me. But I'm just a kid. I don't have money or power or anything. You have a voice, a story, and you have something even more valuable. You have empathy. You know what suffering feels like. That's the most powerful tool for helping others, because you'll see them when other people look away." January brought the 6-month review hearing. Judge Morrison looked over Eli's progress reports, his grades, Martha's testimony about his growth, Teresa's documentation of his therapy sessions. "Well, son, looks like you've been busy." "Yes, sir." "Straight A's, perfect attendance, volunteering at the shelter on weekends." "Tell me about that last part." "I help out where I can, kitchen duty, tutoring younger kids, just trying to give back." Judge Morrison smiled, small but genuine. "That's good. That's real good. Too many people take and never give. You're learning early that contribution matters." He signed some papers. "I'm making Martha's guardianship permanent. You're officially hers now, assuming that's what you both want." "Yes, Your Honor," they said in unison. "Then it's done. Eli, I'm proud of you. Not many kids could have done what you did, survived what you survived. Keep it up. Make something of this life you've been given." "I will, sir. I promise." Outside the courthouse, Martha hugged him so tight he couldn't breathe. "You're mine now. Officially. Legally. Forever. 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 You're stuck with me, kiddo." Eli hugged her back, face buried in her shoulder, trying not to cry and failing. Happy tears this time. Relief tears. Tears that tasted like safety instead of fear. At school the next day, Jenna found him at lunch. "So you're official now. Martha's really your guardian." "Yeah." "That's amazing, Eli. I'm so happy for you." Derek leaned in. "Dude, you should totally write about this for the school paper. Your story, what happened, how you got here." Eli hesitated. "I don't know. It feels too personal." "That's exactly why you should write it. People need to hear stories like yours. Need to know that bad situations don't have to be forever." Maya, who'd been quiet up till now, spoke up. "My cousin was homeless last year, lived in his car for 3 months. Nobody talks about it because there's so much shame. But if people like you speak up, maybe that shame goes away. Maybe people ask for help instead of suffering in silence." Eli thought about that all day. About shame. About silence. About how he'd felt walking into that diner 3 days hungry, ashamed to ask for garbage. About how that shame had almost killed him. That night he started writing. Not for the school paper, not yet, just for himself, getting it all out. The hunger, the fear, the moment Curtis grabbed him. The moment Rocco knelt down and asked if he was okay. The moment Martha said he could stay. All of it. Every painful, beautiful, terrifying moment. He wrote for 3 hours straight. When he finally stopped, his hand cramped and his eyes burned, but his chest felt lighter. Martha knocked on his door around 10. "You're up late." "Couldn't sleep. Been writing." "Can I read it?" Eli hesitated, then handed her the notebook. Watched her face as she read. Watched tears slip down her cheeks. Watched her hand go to her mouth. When she finished, she looked at him with red eyes. "Eli, this is powerful. This is important. You should share this." "I don't know. I'm not saying you have to, but think about it. How many kids out there feel invisible right now? How many are going hungry and think nobody cares? Your story tells them they're not alone, that people do care, that asking for help isn't weakness. What if people judge me? What if they see me different? Then let them. The people who matter won't judge, and the ones who do, their opinions don't matter." Martha sat on his bed. "But here's what I know. Stories have power. Your story has power, and keeping it locked up in shame means that power dies with you. Sharing it means it lives, it spreads, it saves someone else who needs to hear it." Eli thought about Rocco, about how his story had inspired others, about the chain of kindness stretching back through Grace and forward through everyone Rocco had helped. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll do it. I'll write it for the paper." The article ran in February. Front page of the school newspaper. From hunger to hope, one student's story of survival. Eli wrote about everything: the hunger, the rejection, the bikers, the shelter, the court case, all of it. Raw and honest and real. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Kids stopped him in hallways to tell him their own stories. About parents who'd lost jobs, about living in cars, about food insecurity, about foster care, about all the things people suffered silently because shame told them to be quiet. A girl named Rebecca found him after school one day. She was shaking. "I read your article, and I need help. My dad lost his job 2 months ago. We're about to lose our apartment. I don't know what to do." Eli took her straight to the counselor's office, helped her get connected with resources, watched her shoulders untense when she realized she wasn't alone, wasn't the only one struggling. That night he called Rocco. "I helped someone today, a girl at school, connected her with people who could help her family." "Yeah, how's that feel?" "Scary, good, important." Rocco laughed, low and warm. "That's how it's supposed to feel. Grace used to say helping people should make you uncomfortable, because if it's comfortable, you're not doing it right. You're not giving enough of yourself. Is it always this hard? Always. But it gets easier to carry the hard parts. And kid, what you did today, that mattered. That girl's not going to forget you showed up for her, just like you don't forget I showed up for you. I won't. I promise I won't." March brought spring and new growth and a phone call Eli didn't expect. "Eli, it's Curtis Doyle, from the diner." Eli's hand tightened on his phone. He hadn't spoken to Curtis since that morning, hadn't wanted to. Martha had told him about the donation, but Eli hadn't responded. Didn't know what to say to the man who'd thrown him out. "I'm calling to apologize. I know it's late. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to hear this." Curtis's voice was thick. "What I did to you was unforgivable. You were a child, hungry, desperate, and I treated you like garbage because I was angry at the world and you were convenient. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." Eli didn't speak, couldn't. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Curtis continued. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I've been volunteering at Martha's shelter, helping in the kitchen, donating food from the diner. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can do some good going forward." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know. Because you're the one I hurt, and because I read your article in the school paper. Someone showed it to me, and I realized my cruelty almost killed you. If those bikers hadn't shown up, if Martha hadn't taken you in, you might not be here, and I'd have to live with that." Curtis's voice broke. I'd have to live knowing I destroyed a child because I was too bitter to show basic kindness. Eli sat down. His legs felt weak. I forgive you, he said quietly. What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Because I deserve peace. I deserve to not carry anger around. I deserve to move on. Eli's voice was steady, stronger than he felt. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust, doesn't mean we're friends. It just means I'm letting go of what you did so it doesn't poison my life. Curtis was silent for a long moment. Then, that's more than I deserve. Thank you. After they hung up, Eli sat there shaking. Martha found him like that. Who was that? Curtis. Martha's face hardened. What did he want? To apologize. He's been volunteering here, in the kitchen. I know. Been watching him. Making sure it's real and not performance. Martha sat down. You okay? Yeah. I told him I forgive him. Do you? I don't know, but I want to. Carrying hate around is exhausting. I'd rather carry hope. Martha pulled him into a hug. You're wiser than most adults I know. April brought Eli's 13th birthday. Martha threw him a party at the shelter. Nothing fancy. Just cake and friends and people who cared. Jenna came. Derek and Maya and Sarah. Frank was there. Teresa brought her kids. And standing in the back, trying not to be noticed, were 4 bikers in leather vests. Rocco handed him a card. Happy birthday, kid. Inside was a gift certificate to a bookstore and a note. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep being someone Grace would be proud of. Eli looked up with wet eyes. Thank you. For everything. For saving my life. I didn't save anything. Just gave you a chance to save yourself. You did the hard work. Don't forget that. I won't. That night, blowing out candles, surrounded by people who loved him, Eli made a wish, not for himself, for all the kids still sleeping in parks, still going hungry, still invisible. He wished someone would see them, would stop, would care, and he promised himself he'd be that someone, someday. When he was older and stronger and had more to give, he'd be the one who stopped, the one who asked, "Are you okay?" The one who said, "You matter." May brought the end of 7th grade. Report cards came out. Eli had a 4.0. Every teacher wrote comments about his dedication, his kindness, his willingness to help other students. Ms. Chen called him to her office on the last day. Eli, I wanted to tell you personally. You've been nominated for the Student of the Year award. The ceremony is next week. What, why? Because you've shown remarkable growth. Because you've overcome obstacles most kids couldn't imagine. Because you've used your experience to help others. Because you're exactly the kind of student we want to celebrate. The ceremony was bigger than Eli expected. The whole school in the auditorium, parents and teachers and community members. When they called his name, the applause was deafening. He walked on stage on shaking legs. Ms. Chen handed him a plaque. Eli Patterson, for demonstrating resilience, compassion, and academic excellence in the face of extraordinary circumstances. You are an inspiration to us all. From the audience, Martha was crying. Frank was clapping so hard his hands had to hurt. Jenna and her friends were on their feet. And in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, 4 bikers stood up and clapped, slow and steady and proud. That moment, standing on that stage, holding that plaque, Eli understood something he hadn't before. His story wasn't about Curtis throwing him out. That was just the beginning, the catalyst, the moment everything changed. His story was about everyone who'd stepped up after. About Rocco kneeling down on concrete, about Martha saying you can stay, about Sarah packing cookies, about Teresa fighting for him, about Frank telling him stories, about Jenna making room at her lunch table, about Judge Morrison granting guardianship, about every person who'd looked at a broken child and decided he was worth saving. His story was about chains of kindness stretching back through time, about Grace saving Rocco, about Rocco saving him, about him helping Rebecca, about Rebecca probably helping someone else someday. His story was about light existing in dark places, about hope surviving despair, about humans choosing to be better when it would be easier to look away. That summer, Eli turned the article into a longer essay, submitted it to a state writing competition, won first place and $5,000 in scholarship money for college. He used half of it to start a fund at Martha's shelter. The Grace Fund, he called it. Money to help kids who aged out of foster care, who needed help getting started, who deserved a chance. Rocco came to the dedication ceremony, stood in the back like always. When Eli announced the fund's name, Rocco's eyes got bright and he nodded once. Approval, pride, gratitude that someone remembered Grace, that her legacy continued. Afterward, Rocco pulled Eli aside. "You did good, kid. Real good. Grace would have loved this. I wish I could have met her. You did. Through me. Through every person I helped because of what she taught me. That's how we live forever. Through the people we impact. Through the chains we create." Rocco put his hand on Eli's shoulder. "You're part of that chain now, and someday someone else will be part of yours, and Grace's light will keep spreading. That's how we beat the darkness, one person at a time." 3 years passed. Eli finished middle school, started high school, kept his grades up, kept volunteering, kept helping. Curtis kept trying too, showed up at the shelter every week, worked without complaining, slowly, painfully rebuilt his reputation. He and Linda got back together, not married again, but dating, taking it slow, learning to trust each other again. One day, Curtis showed up at the shelter with a teenage boy, maybe 16, thin, scared, hungry. Found him behind my dumpster, asked him what he needed. He said food. Curtis looked at Martha. "Brought him here. Figured you'd know what to do." Martha smiled, took the boy inside, got him settled, fed, safe. Curtis left without fanfare, just did the right thing and walked away. No praise needed, no recognition wanted, just paying it forward like he'd been taught. Eli watched from the window, watched Curtis drive away, felt something complicated in his chest. Not friendship exactly, but respect, understanding, recognition that people could change if they wanted it badly enough. By the time Eli graduated high school, he'd helped start 3 more programs: a food bank at school, a mentorship program matching homeless kids with stable adults, a scholarship fund for foster kids pursuing college. College acceptance letters came in spring, full rides to 4 different universities. He chose the one closest to home, to Martha, to the shelter, to the community that had saved him. On graduation day, wearing his cap and gown and his leather jacket underneath, Eli gave the valedictorian speech. He talked about hunger, about invisibility, about how many people walk past suffering every day and choose not to see it, about how one moment of kindness had changed everything, about Rocco and Grace and Martha and everyone who'd chosen to help instead of hurt. "I shouldn't be standing here," he said. "Statistically, kids like me don't make it. We drop out. We get lost. We disappear. But I'm here because people refuse to let me disappear. Because a man on a motorcycle saw me when everyone else looked away. Because a woman who ran a shelter said I mattered. Because community showed up." He looked out at the audience, at Martha in the front row crying, at Frank beside her, at Teresa, at Rocco and his crew in the back, at Curtis and Linda sitting together, at Jenna and Derek and Maya, at Rebecca who'd graduated last year and come back to watch, at Sarah from the diner, at the elderly couple who'd left the $10 tip, at the nurse, at everyone who'd played a part. "I'm standing here because of all of you, and I'm making you a promise. I will spend the rest of my life making sure other kids don't fall through the cracks the way I almost did. I will see them. I will help them. I will be the person who stops and asks, 'Are you okay?' Because that's what Grace taught Rocco. That's what Rocco taught me. And that's what I'll teach someone else. That's how light spreads. That's how we change the world. One person at a time. One choice at a time. One moment of kindness at a time." The applause was thunderous, standing ovation, everyone on their feet. But Eli wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Rocco, and Rocco was looking back with tears on his weathered face and pride in his eyes. He nodded once, the same nod from 3 years ago. Approval. recognition, passing the torch. And Eli understood. This was it. This was the moment. The moment he officially joined that chain, became a link, became someone who would carry Grace's light forward into whatever came next. 10 years later, Dr. Eli Patterson walked into his office at the nonprofit he'd founded. Breaking Chains, it was called, an organization dedicated to helping homeless youth, providing shelter, education, job training, and hope. His phone rang. Martha. Turn on the news. He did, and there was Curtis Doyle on screen, being interviewed about his community service work, about how he'd spent the last decade volunteering, about the lives he'd touched, about redemption and second chances. "What changed you?" the reporter asked. Curtis smiled, sad but genuine. "A 12-year-old boy asked me for bread, and I said no, and it nearly destroyed both of us. But some bikers stepped in, showed me what real strength looks like, and I've spent every day since trying to earn back the humanity I threw away that morning." Eli watched the screen, felt something full and complicated and healing in his chest. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Saw the interview. Thought of you. Hope you're still out there saving people. Rocco." Eli smiled. Typed back, "Every day, just like you taught me. How's retirement? Boring, but proud. You did good, kid. Grace would be proud too." Eli looked around his office, at the pictures on the wall, kids he'd helped, lives he'd changed, chains he'd continued. He thought about that morning 13 years ago, standing at a diner door so hungry he could barely think straight, about Curtis's cruelty, about Rocco's kindness, about every moment after that led him here, to this office, this life, this purpose. He thought about Grace, a woman he'd never met but whose impact had saved him, about how she'd helped Rocco, about how Rocco had helped him, about how he'd helped Rebecca and hundreds of others, about how those others would help more, and on, forever. Light spreading, chains growing, hope multiplying. That's how darkness lost. Not through grand gestures or viral moments or headlines, but through daily choices, small kindnesses, seeing people, stopping when others walked past, asking, "Are you okay?" and meaning it. Through bikers who knelt on concrete, through shelter workers who said, "You can stay," through seventh graders who made room at lunch tables, through managers who looked in mirrors and chose to change, through judges who granted mercy, through journalists who told stories, through kids who grew up and paid forward what was given to them. That's how the world got better, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of grace at a time. And Eli Patterson, who'd once been invisible, who'd once been starving, who'd once been thrown away like garbage, had become living proof that one moment of kindness could echo across decades, touch thousands of lives, and prove that every single person matters, that nobody is disposable, that we are all worthy of being seen, of being fed, of being saved, and that the greatest power any of us possess is the simple, radical, world-changing act of giving a damn when it would be easier to look away.